There you go.
Usually someone else makes a motion, correct?
Yeah, it would be good to have a formal motion.
Yep.
Yeah.
See, cast reigns. Could someone else make a motion that would either be one of you two to promote?
move that, that are, what do we call this? Alternate. Associate, members, be, promoted for today.
Ashley Case and John Quinn. Yeah.
Second that motion.
And so the three of us can promote the two of them.
Yes,
All right.
I think that's sufficient.
We can vote, approve.
And
All right. See, chaos reigns when Phil's not here. Sorry. All right. Next item, acceptance of the agenda. Can I get a motion? Can I get a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Okay. Third item, is approval of the minutes of August 2025. Can we get a motion to table that? Do we even need to vote or can we just say we're going to table it?
A motion to table.
Yep. Can I get a motion to table? Since we
Motion
don't
to
have a-
table
we don't have a quorum.
the August 20th minutes for next meeting.
All those approve? Okay. All right, new business. First item is public hearing decision, minor site plan review, shoreline zoning application of town Orono Parks and Recreation Department of, installation. You go first, Isabel? Is that correct? So she's going to give us an overview and then we'll ask the applicant to chime in. Okay.
Okay, so as was mentioned, this is a shoreline zoning permit and minor site plan review application. The applicant is the town of Orono Parks and Recreation Department. The project before you is the construction of a 15 by 13-foot pergola to be placed on a 20 by 15-foot concrete pad with a 4-foot wide accessible path. This is on town-owned land. It's the Union Street Boat Launch. It is located in the MDR and the Limited Residential Shoreland District. And just so you're aware, public and nonprofit recreational facilities and uses, as defined in Article 2, are an allowed use within the MDR zoning district, but they require planning board approval. In addition, the use public and private recreational areas involving minimal structural development requires planning board approval within the Limited Residential Shoreland Zone. So that's why they're here this evening. Just to give you a little bit more context, this is an overall site plan of the property. It's, as I think we're all aware, sort of the corner of Penobscot Street and Union Street. This site plan is from when the boat launch was added by Bangor Hydro in the early 1990s. The green hatched line that you're seeing represents the water setback under the shoreland zoning provisions. The green box and the path represent what is currently being proposed. Also, just as a note, at some point, some additional parking spots were added, which are not shown on this site plan, just as a informational item. And I'll talk about the number of parking spots in just a moment. As you can see, the path and the pergola concrete pad area are fully outside of the water setback, but because of its location within the shoreland area, the permit itself still requires planning board review. In terms of unique issues that the planning board wants to hear about, in terms of buffering and screening under section 18-126, the board has the authority to require a 75-foot buffer strip along any water body adjacent to or within the project area where the board determines it desirable or necessary. In this case, a 75-foot buffer from the river is already required by the shoreland zoning provisions, and some limited wooded area does exist between that buffer. Until recently, the site was covered in knotweed, which is an invasive species, which has recently been removed. There are no trees within the vicinity of the proposed pergola site. No trees will need to be removed. And there are no streams, vernal pools, or groundwater aquifers located on the entirety of the site. The project area is located adjacent to the Penobscot River, and it's within the shoreland area. So the main potential impacts to natural resources include issues associated with drainage and erosion control, which I'll discuss in just a second. So as was mentioned, the proposal is for the construction of a 15-foot by 13-foot pergola placed on a concrete pad. And there is a 4-foot wide ADA accessible path as well. There is some minor regrading, including the bringing in of gravel fill proposed to allow for the installation of that path to the pergola. It doesn't trigger the need for a stormwater permit from the state, given the very minimal amount of development being proposed. And there are no issues with the provisions for stormwater management being proposed. Our engineering peer reviewer from Ulver Associates has reviewed this and provided an email that was in your packet. Erosion control measures will be implemented, meeting the specifications contained in the Maine Department of Environmental Protection's Best Management Practices Manual. Mainly, they include a silt fence along the perimeter of the project site and a double silt fence along the Penobscot River. The town's environmental services manager, who works out of the Public Works Department, Megan Hess, she will regularly inspect the erosion control measures throughout construction of the pergola. She's also our typical erosion control inspector for any projects in town, just so you're aware. With regard to traffic, access, and parking, vehicular access to the site will continue to be from the existing Union Street entrance. No changes are proposed. The pergola is anticipated to really be a neighborhood amenity, not a major traffic draw, so minimal changes in vehicular traffic are expected given this. The state has reviewed the project. This is under a Land for Maine's Future Project Fund agreement. They have indicated that the existing parking should be more than enough for both the boat launch and the park use, concurring that there's not likely to be a substantial increase in vehicular traffic. No town parking standards are outlined in that section, section 18-135 for this kind of project. The project was also reviewed by the fire department, no concerns raised. The pergola and the picnic area will be connected to the parking area by a 4-foot wide accessible trail consistent with relevant review standards that require some light pedestrian access. However, no sidewalks exist in the vicinity of the site. Therefore, additional pedestrian standards like a requirement to construct additional sidewalks don't apply here. That only applies when there's an existing sidewalk. With regard to lighting and signage, there's no signage proposed and no new lighting proposed. The boat launch is only meant to be open and available during daylight hours, I believe. No new utilities proposed or required. They have requested waivers, mainly to the waiver is to the requirement to submit a standard boundary survey, noting that the 2-scale site plan that I showed was previously prepared back in 1993 for the addition to the boat launch on this site, which this project is based off of. Staff is in agreement, given that the proposed pergola is fully outside of the water setback, which is really the main concern here. It's not adjacent to any property lines. That's not necessarily a question. And given the applicant's information that they've provided with the site plan. There are our typical standard conditions. And then in terms of a unique condition, the applicant should be aware that the project's location within the FEMA floodplain will require a floodplain permit by the code enforcement officer prior to the start of construction as well. And I believe that is all I have. Let me just verify that there are no additional conditions needed here. Nope, that's all I have from you or for you.
Okay, the applicant?
Hi, I'm Megan Mazzella. I'm the Parks and Rec Director for the town of Orono. Thank you, Isabel, for highlighting everything in your presentation. A little bit of background on the project. This was a community-led project. It was the neighborhood was very interested in seeing some amenities added to that space. And it was brought to council in a meeting in March to approve funding and the continuation of seeing what amenities could be possible in this space. So through some of those public meetings, the pergola, along with an accessible pad, seemed to be the most amenable thing by adding more space for those folks who are interested in such. Do you have any questions for me at this time?
So I'll open it to the board at this point before we go to public comment. Any questions from the board?
No.
I just had a quick question, and maybe you kind of addressed this as well in the sidewalk commentary, but with where the ADA accessible path lands in the parking lot, does it land in a place that it kind of continues to be accessible when spaces are being used? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, yes. So the design of the
Or the
path,
requirements around that? Sorry.
my concern with making sure that path existed was placing a concrete pad in the center of a park with no way to access this isn't, I don't think kind of modernly something we would look to do. The path will go alongside the last parking space on that side. So the parking spaces were originally designed for boat trailers. They are quite wide and quite long, so you are able to access it from that space. So if someone with accessibility issues was visiting the park, they are able to exit the vehicle, stay on flat asphalt, and then transfer to the concrete pad without stairs or that ridge that might be there. Although there aren't sidewalks that someone might be able to walk all the way down, we did place it accordingly. So if you are in that space, you're not going from grass to concrete to access the center where there would be in the future a bench or picnic table in that space that someone might want to be present at.
And I think to get at your question, you were wondering like if I was parked in a different space and needed to access it, would I still be able to get around that vehicle? Was that sort of the nature of your question?
Yeah, if those boat trailer parking spots were all filled up, which I'm sure does not happen very often. I'm sure this is like a but would that be limiting access?
So
Speak to that.
part of the Isabel touched on that this property has some shared agreements with the state of Maine. Part of those shared agreements was, although there is a lot of parking, they did want to identify some designated boat and parking lot spaces. Those parking lot spaces towards the end of the park, farther away from the boat launch, can be designated for more recreational park style use than boat style use. So that was the plan there to identify those spaces moving forward.
I had one question, but it's really not for the applicant. It's more procedural, which was you had erosion control as one of our conditions, but the 75 foot buffer strip was not, which is a little bit unique since this is in the shoreline zoning and it's required. Was there a reason that we didn't, or is it?
So they are already proposing to meet that standard. That's why I didn't add that in
still
there.
good to go?
Yeah, I mean, and you could argue that they're already proposing to meet erosion control as well, but that one's one of our standard conditions, so I just left it in.
Left in there.
Yeah.
Got it. The other one procedural question is, do we need to address the waiver separately from?
Yes, so you should vote on the waiver piece first, after hearing from the public, and then vote on the overall application.
Understood.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. With that, any other questions? We'll open it to the public. Is there anyone online? All right.
So Donna Marie, you have been given the ability to speak, but you'll have to unmute.
Hi, can you hear me?
If you could speak up just a little bit, we'll be able to hear you better, but we can hear you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for taking my question. I have two. Will there be designated handicap spaces near the path that is proposed? And my second question is, if approved, when will the construction of these items occur? And how long do you anticipate it taking for completion?
With the parking requirements set by the state, identifying handicap spaces was part of one of those things. One point, it does look like handicap spaces were identified in that space, but it has been quite some time that has been refurbished in that way. So that will be part of that park planning. Thank you for that question, because it is, there is a lot of space in that park for parking. So we do have a lot of options when assigning those spaces. We're not limited in that way for this specific project. As Isabel said, there's another permitting step in this process. Pouring concrete does require weather to be good, so we would attempt to start the process as soon as possible to try and beat the frost and some snow. So as part of the code enforcement part of this approval, making sure that is designated in the right ways and following that stature, we would start as soon as possible, given the next steps.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Any other questions or people online?
I don't have anyone else online.
All right, I'm gonna close the public hearing. And are there any other questions by the board? All right, can I get a motion?
We need to do
Oh, the waiver.
first.
Yeah, motion for the waiver. Yep, we have to do the waiver first. Which is a waiver on the boundary survey.
Okay, I moved that we waive the boundary survey.
Is that adequate?
What else do you need?
Based on the information provided already by the applicant.
Yes.
Okay.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Can I get a second motion? Volunteer.
And is this the final?
Yes, page 4.
I move to approve minor site plan amendment and shoreline permit application of the town of Orono. Received July 22nd, 2025 to construct a 15 by 13 pergola to be placed on a 20 by 15 concrete pad and install a 4-foot wide ADA accessible trail from the existing parking lot to the pergola per the findings of fact dated September 17th, 2025, subject to these conditions, the listed conditions.
Second.
Do we need to read the unique condition or are we good with that?
No, I think it's fine as long as it's noted in the memo. And then just for anyone watching online, the draft findings that the board is referencing were provided in the meeting packet with this application.
All those in favor? Okay. And then formal findings of fact, that's in the books now, right? So many different iterations. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you. Next item is Russell Edgar.
I'll just give my brief presentation here, if you bear with me for 1 second. Okay. So as was mentioned, the applicant is Russell Edgar. This is a minor site plan review for the establishment of a homestay 2, which is a short-term rental under our ordinances. This is in the MDR, the medium density residential zoning district. It's tax map 20-3 lot 22, and it's the property highlighted on the screen here. He has submitted a sketch plan showing the overall property. No changes to the overall site are proposed with this application. As you can expect, this is wholly interior to the structure here. And there are no changes required there either. In terms of unique issues, just wanted to highlight, so the proposed use, which is a homestay 2 or a non-owner occupied short-term rental, is an allowable use in the MDR zoning district with planning board approval. The change of use does not involve any new exterior construction, any changes to the site. You should be aware, however, that the property is a grandfathered non-conforming property with respect to minimum lot area and frontage requirements in the MDR zoning district. Like many properties within the MDR zoning district, district has a minimum lot area of 15,000 square feet when on public water and sewer. The subject property has about 8,200 square feet. The requirement is 80 feet of road frontage, and the subject property has 75 feet, about. With regard to traffic access and parking, the use proposes to utilize the existing single-family dwelling for the purpose of a short-term rental for people visiting or vacationing in the area. And therefore, traffic is anticipated to be consistent with that of a residential neighborhood. In addition, the site provides adequate space for the required 2 off-street parking spots so that renters can park all vehicles off the street, consistent with the requirements of section 18-135. And I did go ahead and take a drive out to the site just to verify that that is the case, and more than 2 cars could fit in that driveway. With regard to utilities, the proposed change of use does not require any changes to existing utilities. The site is served by public water and sewer. I did reach out to the town's water pollution control facility, our sewer department, and just asked, is there any need to pay like upgrade fee or any additional fees associated with this? Chris Prue, who's the superintendent there, did note that the rental's not expected to utilize more water or generate, more wastewater than a single family home. So no additional usage fees are required, and the existing sewer capacity is sufficient. He is prepared to provide something in writing if you'd prefer, but I can summarize that conversation. And then with other issues, obviously the proposed use does not involve any expansion of the structure or changes to impervious, pavement or anything on the site. So the other site plan review criteria typically reviewed related to items like stormwater management, erosion control, natural features, historic and archaeological resources, and hazardous materials aren't applicable to this proposed project. They did also request a waiver. It's to all submission requirements that are relevant only to new construction projects, summarized here and in your packet. And staff is, of course, in agreement since there's no site work or building proposed. In terms of conditions, we have 2 standard conditions that would be relevant here. And then the 3rd condition is one that we have to put on every short-term rental, which is that the dwelling can only be rented to up to 3 unrelated persons at any given time, to meet the ordinance limitation on occupancy for any dwelling unit outlined in the definition of family in section 18-31 of our land use ordinance. The applicant has a representative here. He's also, I believe, available online to speak if needed. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Isabel.
His Airbnb,
So I'm Cynthia Martinez Edgar. I'm going to be co-hosting the Airbnb for when he's out of town. And I live on Harrison Ave, so I'm not far away.
Thank you. Any questions from the board before I open it to the public? All right, we'll open it to the public. Anyone online? Anyone here?
No one has their hand raised online.
Okay, I'll keep it open for another 30 seconds. Any questions from the board? All right, that was a fast 30 seconds. All right. This seems pretty straightforward to me. So with that, can I get a closed public forum? Can I get a motion on the requested waiver? It's page 3, around the new construction, including project surveys, topographic maps, soil information, etc.
I move to approve the requested waiver under section 18-270 for submission requirements relevant only to new construction.
Second.
All those in favor? Can I get a motion on the item?
I move to approve the minor site plan application of Russell Edgar received August 7th, 2025 to establish a homestay 2 at 7 Crosby Street, tax map 20-3 lot 22 per the findings of fact dated September 17th, 2025, subject to the 2 of the standard conditions and the 3rd unique condition for this property.
All those in favor?
Oh, sorry, was there a second on that?
Oh,
Second.
yeah, sorry.
Second.
All those in favor?
There you go.
Thank you. right, thank you.
Can I hit the road or?
Yes, you're okay.
All right, on to the third item under new business. Isabel?
Okay, thank you for bearing with the technology here. Should be up, okay. So this project is for Renew Health PLLC. The applicant is also Jennifer Kennerk. Did I get that right? Okay, great. Minor site plan review, and this is for the establishment of a home business. The property is located within the F&A zoning district and it's tax map 31 lot 3. This is an overall sketch plan of the property, both the exterior and then also an interior floor plan of the first floor. No changes to the site are proposed with this application. And if you would like a more zoomed in version, that was included in your packet. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. With regard to land use and zoning, again, the proposed use is a home business, which is a subcategory of home occupation under the definitions found in Article 2. It is an allowable use in the F&A district with planning board approval. The change of use does not involve any new exterior construction or any changes to the site. Likewise, this property is also a grandfathered non-conforming property with respect to minimum lot area and frontage requirements in the F&A, which requires almost 4 acres of minimum lot area, 160,000 square feet. This property is almost exactly an acre. 200 feet of road frontage is the requirement. This property has 140 feet. That doesn't necessarily change anything for your purposes this evening. It's not an expansion of a nonconformity or changes to the site, but wanted you to be aware. With regard to traffic, access, and parking, the proposed home business is likely to generate about 5 to 6 trip ends per day. That's just consistent with the number of customers expected to be seen on the premises. She's provided some information on her business hours, which are anticipated to be Wednesdays and Fridays with occasional Saturdays. Section 18-135 requires 2 off-street parking spots for dwelling units with 2 or more bedrooms, and then 1 off-street parking spot for every 250 square feet of gross leasable area for professional offices, services, and medical clinics, which this type of use would fall under. So total of 3 required. She has submitted that 2-scale sketch, and I did also drive by the site to verify that this could fit. This existing parking area can accommodate up to 5 parking stalls in accordance with the standards of this section. So should be fine there. With regard to utilities, the proposed change of use doesn't require any changes to the existing utilities. While this home is on a septic system, again, this isn't a use that necessarily is typically associated with major wastewater generation. It's an acupuncture and medical aesthetics type of use. So as such, the site can supply adequate water and sewage disposal capacity for the proposed use without any changes to existing utilities. Signage will need to be reviewed by the code enforcement officer consistent with the sign permitting requirements. I've suggested a condition number 3 just to reiterate that to the applicants. And then the signage may be no greater than 2 square feet in area for home businesses per section 18-131E. There's no new lighting proposed with this application. Again, this proposed use doesn't involve any expansion of the structure or changes to impervious area on site. So other site plan review criteria typically reviewed, stormwater management, erosion control, et cetera, are not applicable to this proposed project. And then likewise, there was a waiver on this that for all of the submission requirements that are relevant only to new construction projects. Those are listed out in the memo and on the screen here, and staff is in agreement given that no building or site work is proposed. With regard to the conditions, typical standard 2 conditions, and then that reiteration of the requirement that any future signage needs to be reviewed by the code enforcement officer through our sign permit process, and just citing the specific standard around the limitation on the sign. The limitation on the sign is basically to keep the character of a residential neighborhood and not necessarily, you can have a business there, but not make it so overly large as to change the character. So that's all I have. The applicant is here if you have questions for her. But we are recommending approval.
Do you have anything to add?
No, just here and happy to answer any questions if you have any. Thank you.
Board have any questions?
Okay.
All right, let's go to the public. Open up the public forum. No hands raised.
And no hands raised online either.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna close the public forum. And any more discussion? All right, can I get a motion on the requested waiver around new construction?
I propose we approve the waiver to for all of the new construction submission requirements, as there's no new construction for this project.
Second.
All those in favor? Okay. All right, can I get a second motion?
Got it here. I move to approve the minor site plan application of Russell Edgar received August 7th, 2025 to establish a home business.
Oh, so
Sorry.
this one is actually, this might have been my fault. It's Renew Health PLLC.
The LLC.
Ah, okay. That's not what I have in front of me, but I can change that on the fly in my head.
Okay.
I move to approve the minor site plan application of, I said that and then I forgot it immediately. Renew Health PLLC, received August 7th, 2025 to establish a home business at 15 Old Kelly Ave. Per the findings of fact dated September 17th, 2025, subject to the relevant standard conditions and the unique conditions listed in the memo.
Second.
All those in favor? Okay. All right. Thank you. That ends new business. Now on to the town planner report.
Sorry, I don't.
So just wanted to give you a brief update on the ongoing comprehensive plan process. We now have a public draft available that I'd like to present to you. My goodness, if I can get it on my screen. Okay. So we now have a public draft that has become available. The Comprehensive Plan Committee unanimously voted to make this available at their last meeting. I know I just recently gave an update on this, so I might sort of fly through the beginning part of this, but really want to highlight the goals and priorities that have emerged throughout this process. So we will review a brief overview of the planning process, what we heard, and then I'll go through the priority goals and the next steps with you. At this point, I'm sort of looking for some feedback on the priority goals. I think you guys start to hear things from community members and, have a pretty thorough understanding of what the community is looking for at this point. So if there's anything that hasn't necessarily been addressed here, I would like to know that information. So just a brief overview. We started this process back in April of 2024. We did an extensive review of existing conditions and the existing comprehensive plan policy, met with town staff, got a lot of feedback on sort of what might be currently an issue or a future opportunity. We then went through a public engagement phase from September to February of this year, sort of continued into the summer as well. And that was when we heard the issues and opportunities as the public sees them. Then from March to about August of this year, we actually went through policymaking, trying to marry the issues and opportunities from town staff perspective and what the data is showing with the issues and opportunities that were brought up by the public during our public engagement, where you've now come up with a set of draft recommendations for priority goals, policies, and actions that I'll be sharing with you this evening. The next step is we have a final plan open house actually next next week on Tuesday and Thursday that folks are invited to attend. We've been trying to get the word out on social media and through flyers around the town. And at that point, we will sort of have wrapped up the public draft. We do have a state required public hearing, and the public draft needs to be locked by September 29th in advance of that public hearing. So we'll take any feedback that we get from the workshops, lock the draft, have a public hearing, make any necessary changes, and then we anticipate that council will actually be reviewing this in probably November of this year for their own public hearing and hopefully vote for adoption. Just to go through the public engagement summary, we started out the process with an online survey, which received 244 responses. We had a number of meetings really diving deep on certain topics. So from the online survey, we started to realize that housing, the economy, and specifically downtown, active transportation, and outdoor recreation and natural resources were sort of the top priority topics that people wanted to have more discussion about. Then we had a sort of broad brush visioning event in January that drew about 40 attendees. And we wrapped up public engagement with future land use specific workshops in July of this year, which had about 30 attendees. Those workshops were focused specifically on the future land use map that I'll share in just a second, and giving feedback on where the community wanted to see growth and development occur and what that development should look and feel like. And then maybe what areas should be prioritized for conservation purposes or just stay more rural. So again, we had those priority focus areas that started to come out. In terms of community values, we had a lot of conversation around community cohesion, making sure we have a diversity of businesses, mainly businesses that serve the everyday needs of local residents. Economic vitality, so generally it feeling, vibrant and full of life when you walk downtown. Increasing housing options for all ages and through the lifespan, increasing and maintaining public service capacity, reducing vehicular traffic, and or increasing alternative modes of transportation when possible. With that, we came up with a vision statement. So Orono is a walkable, bikeable, outdoors-oriented community serving as the gateway to the Maine wilderness and located on the ancestral lands of the Penobscot Nation. As the proud home of the University of Maine's flagship campus, Orono is a culturally rich haven that brings people together through diverse events and abundant economic opportunity. We nurture the growth of our beloved small town in harmony with the dynamic energy that being a university community offers. We are a pinnacle of diversity and friendly neighborhoods, which ensures that everyone feels at home and thrives in our community. And we recognize resiliency and sustainability in all of our decision making. With the vision statement, we came up with a number of priority goals as bullet points that I'll talk about in just a second. So with respect to those priorities, we work together to tackle common problems, provide mutual support, respect one another's diversity, all towards this shared common vision. So with regard to the priority goals and objectives, I'm only going through the more broad brush goals and objectives here. We also have some very specific action strategies that are outlined in the implementation matrix, which is available online. I would encourage you to take a look at it. If there's like a specific piece of town that you're most interested in, we kind of touch on every topic related to municipal government, and there's sort of something for everyone there. But I'm going to reference the priority goals and policies in this presentation. I do just want to note, because I've gotten this question, we have to prioritize things. We can't tackle everything all within the first, 4 to 5 years. So these priorities are what we hope to tackle first, but that doesn't mean they are the only priorities or the only goals of the comp plan. We just had to sort of start to parse out what people wanted us to tackle initially. And we have a variety of other goals and policies that we would be tackling in sort of the subsequent phases of implementation. This is a 10 to 12 year document. So okay, so our big ideas. First, we focused on housing. So attainable housing, that's through a combination of both regulation and incentives. The related objectives to that are creating opportunities for home ownership within the designated growth area, with a specific emphasis on families with school-aged children. The data is telling us that we've lost a considerable amount of those kinds of families over the past really 20 years, but especially in the last 10, in support of the community and the region's economic development. Again, through a combination of both regulation and incentives to build that kind of housing. I should note that anything with an asterisk next to it is a state requirement. The state has a number of required objectives that need to be included within the comprehensive plan, and this is one of them. So aim for at least 10% of all new residential development in the next decade to be subsidized or regulated, senior affordable, inclusive of those with disabilities, or workforce housing. The state only says affordable. We drilled down a little bit more because what we realized was that we're really lacking in senior affordable and that like missing middle or workforce housing, firefighters, teachers, that sort of income range in the community. And then finally, amends the land use controls to stimulate the production of attainable housing, starter homes, missing middle housing, smaller one-bedroom and studio housing units, inclusive of older adults and young professionals, and family homes in service of ensuring school sustainability. The reason that in that last objective we called those things out is because that's really what both the data and the public were telling us they were the most interested in. Okay, and then with economy, we have a couple of major big ideas. So growing our workforce to allow for a diversity of businesses that meet the daily needs of the community to locate here. Related, we would amend the town's land use ordinance to stimulate the production of new year-round housing, a lot of what I just mentioned. Promoting cultural amenities and working with partners to create festivals, events, and plenty of points of interest to explore in Orono for all age groups. Creating opportunities for volunteer-led, inexpensive, and short-term community art projects or demonstrations, or festivals or things like that. And then with regard mostly to downtown, enhancing feet on the street, which is sort of a jargony term, but it really just means more people living and working in and around Orono's downtown. So amending the standards of the Village Commercial District, which is sort of this one right out here, to allow offices, salons, barbershops, or other flexible uses that meet the everyday needs within about a mile of downtown that people can walk or bike to. When we're trying to think of where we should be really incentivizing new residential growth, looking to Mill Street, Pine Street, and the neighborhoods to the north of the existing downtown as opportunities for new residential growth in easy walking distance. And then working with owners of vacant properties in the downtown area to fill vacancies with businesses that would serve the day-to-day needs of residents. Then with regard to outdoor recreation and natural resources, enhancing or expanding access to natural environments for recreation. So a lot of this is around either maintaining or improving existing recreational facilities as necessary to meet current and future needs. And one of the potential action steps there is actually doing a survey of the community to figure out what those current or future needs are. And then strengthening Orono's image as a scenic river town by enhancing the connection to the river. And seeking to achieve or continuing to maintain at least one major point of public access to all water bodies for boating, fishing, swimming, and working with nearby property owners to address any concerns that might arise. This is one that the state specifically requires. They're really looking to promote outdoor water recreation. So wanted to add that in there. Then working with partners to protect important outdoor and natural areas, special habitats, wildlife corridors, water bodies, and scenic vistas for future generations. The objective and the related action step here is really around creating a recreation open space plan. So the comp plan frequently recommends other planning exercises. This is really an opportunity to prioritize sites that might be appropriate for recreation and conservation uses or trail network connectivity. And recommendations for how to address managing that land in the future. One of the things that we continually had conversations about both at our comp plan committee meetings, which many of you are on, but then also with our public engagement conversations is sort of this need for trail connectivity and easements on trails that cross private properties that currently there's no public rights to. So being able to connect that where we can. And that recreation and open space planning process would really help in prioritizing those sites and trying to sort of address any concerns that might arise. And then with regard to transportation, again, we're really looking to incentivize walking, biking, and public transit and reduce vehicular traffic. So increasing sustainable mobility and decreasing vehicle miles traveled by further investing in public transit and active transportation infrastructure improvements. Specifically, over and over again, we heard that the biggest bang for our buck right now is implementing the Route 2 corridor plan that was developed by Sebago Technics through an additional public engagement process in 2024. Again, balancing the diverse transportation needs of all users, regardless of mode, so pedestrians, cyclists, motor vehicles, or ability. And related to that, adopting complete streets and Vision Zero policies, which backs who is our metropolitan planning authority for transportation improvements, is really working on those kinds of policies and working with towns to adopt those at this point. And those kinds of policies are ensuring that the diverse transportation needs of all users are balanced through a complete streets policy. So as we're making transportation upgrades, making sure that the council and Public Works and those involved have at least considered those and have articulated potentially why, you know, a further, you know, a bicycle lane or something is not appropriate or applicable or cost effective or what have you, you know, at least being able to articulate the reasons why we're not pursuing something. And then Vision Zero is around ensuring that they safety mainly, so no traffic related deaths or car accident related deaths or injuries. And then with regard to public facilities, a lot of what we kept hearing was around even if it wasn't specifically related to, for example, expanding staff capacity, that's ultimately what the comment would lead to. So we heard a lot around expanding code enforcement capacity, being more proactive in code enforcement, expanding some of the services that, for example, recreation offers, or being proactive to address service basically, and making sure that we are providing public service at the level that the community expects, you know, adequately funding those things. So that's ultimately up to the community to articulate what they have come to expect. But part of that is identifying public service needs and developing efficient, actionable strategies to meet them. Continuing to explore options for the regional delivery of local services like we do with the bus. Prioritizing the provision of public facilities and services that promote and support development in identified growth areas. Growth in designated growth areas is often more cost effective than sprawl or growth outside of those growth areas. Continuing to explore grants available to assist in the funding of capital and maintenance investments, and supporting the level of financial commitment necessary to provide needed infrastructure in designated growth areas consistent with the community's vision. The comp plan also includes a capital improvement plan that sort of articulates and provides very broad and general cost suggestions or cost estimates is the word I'm looking for, cost estimates for some of the known infrastructure improvements that would be needed to articulate the community's vision for growth and development. I just want to highlight this for a second. I provided this in a training I was doing today, but I think it's important to say here too. So talking about planning versus zoning, planning and the comprehensive plan process we just went through is really the legal decision-making process where a community's goals and objectives for deciding future uses of land are established using planning principles and significant public engagement. It's usually broad goals like what I just shared. So sustainability, housing, safety, conservation. This is related to zoning, but is different. Zoning is the legal process for regulating the type, location, size, scale, density of land uses through the adopted regulations and policies, which are intended to encourage or hinder development in accordance with the community's goals. So the planning process that we just went through is sort of the articulation of the community's goals. And I anticipate that we are likely to require a zoning amendment process that actually make sure that our regulations are reflective of the community's goals. So two different processes. I don't know if we need to get into the weeds this much, but just so you know, the town has local authority for growth management through the State's Growth Management Act, which was adopted in 1988. It has changed a little bit since then, but the basic provisions have remained the same. And it enables through the Home Rule Authority that every municipality may adopt local growth management programs, including comprehensive plans and implementation programs, including zoning ordinances. So we have some legal backing from the state with this one. I should note that the adoption of comprehensive plans and the adoption of local zoning ordinances actually is voluntary, except for shoreland zoning, which is a requirement of every Maine municipality. But if a municipality chooses to adopt zoning, the ordinance needs to be persistent to and consistent with a comprehensive plan that was adopted by the municipal legislative body, which in our case is the town council. So we have articulated the goals in the comprehensive plan, and any zoning changes here forward would need to be, once adopted, would need to be pursuant to and consistent with those goals. I showed this at our last meeting, I believe, but this is the future land use map that we've come up with. So all of the light green and dark green areas would be the rural areas where we are essentially attempting to discourage growth and development, or at least not expressly encourage. And then all of the other colors, the yellow, orange, purple, blue, the brown, are where we are attempting to encourage expressly growth and development. Most of our in-town neighborhoods are limited growth areas. We recognize that we need to maintain the infrastructure that we have there, that we need to encourage some limited growth consistent with the current, neighborhood character. But ultimately, the growth that's intended is for some of these other areas in the community, and that is at a higher scale articulated in the vision statement for the vision for each of these areas in the comprehensive plan. So again, would encourage you to take a look if you haven't already. There are 3 numbers on here. Those are sort of our key catalyst sites, or sites that are really ripe for probably further conversation, potentially contract zoning. I know you all have, some of you have been through that process before, where we're sort of creating a specific zone because of some unique issues with a property, environmental or brownfields or what have you, that would make otherwise redevelopment under the existing zoning ordinance difficult or near impossible. So we've specifically highlighted those areas for potential further development. Next steps, again, next week, we have public interactive workshops to review this in more detail, get some additional feedback. We have a public hearing on October 29th. After that, the Comprehensive Plan Committee will review comments and revise the document as necessary. And then we'll have council meetings and public hearings in November and December, hoping and anticipating that there will be a council vote in December, so before the end of the year. Implementation will take 10 to 12 years. Again, the comp plan will recommend other plans and studies that we'll have to undertake. Those in turn should be reflected in town ordinances and any future amendments, and then other policies and programming decisions, including potentially like budget decisions of the council. We hope that this will serve as a guiding document for those kinds of decisions. This is where you can review the plan draft, and there's a link on our town website. If you go to our town website, orono.org, there's also just a big button right on the homepage if you are interested in diving into any more detail. Any questions or comments from the board on that? I would encourage you, if you have any questions, we are happy to have conversations, or I am happy, I should say, and you can feel free to reach out to me. Again, we have to lock the document by September 29th, but then would be anticipating making changes in late October if there are any that need to be made.
Thank you, Isabel. That was thorough.
Very good.
You summed up, I don't know, 80 hours of meetings and everything else in 15 minutes. All right, with that, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Done.
Thank you.